Alex sat in the armchair, the dim yellow light casting soft shadows on his hand, where his fingers intertwined tightly with one another. It was late, but sleep eluded him. His gaze drifted across the computer screen, then back to the silent phone beside him. A heavy, oppressive feeling seemed to fill the room, like an invisible ghost lingering in the corners. He couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong with his family, but something was definitely off. Olivia, his wife, had changed. She wasn't the woman he had once known, the one who laughed at his jokes, the one who always supported him when he was weary from work. For months now, she had grown distant, cold, and the evenings they once spent watching movies together had turned into silence. She no longer hugged him, no longer asked him about his day, no longer shared the little joys and sorrows of life. Just a few days ago, after a long business trip, Alex had come home to find Olivia standing by the door, her eyes staring blankly into the distance, as though waiting for someone. A strange gust of wind swept through the empty house. He didn't say anything, just watched her quietly. Olivia turned her face away, hiding an unease that Alex could feel. There was a disconnect between them that he couldn't explain. Everything seemed hazy, unclear. He knew he had to do something. In a moment of quick decision, Alex secretly placed a small voice recorder in Olivia's car. Little did he know, this would be the decision that changed everything, an unexpected key opening a door he had never wanted to walk through. That night, as Olivia drove off, he was left alone in the house, consumed by dark thoughts. Doubts surged in like an overwhelming wave. The next day, as she left the house, Alex couldn't resist. He turned on the recorder and heard her speaking, not to him, but to another man. Olivia's laughter, so familiar yet so foreign now, pierced through him like a knife to the heart. She was no longer his wife. She was no longer the woman he had loved. She was a different person, laughing and joking with another man, someone she had likely been waiting for all along. "I love you. You know I do." The man's warm voice echoed in Alex's ears, freezing him in place. "This summer we'll go together, right? Wait for me, you'll be mine. I promise." Alex's heart seemed to stop. He couldn't breathe. It was all clear now. Olivia had someone else. And that someone wasn't just a friend. He tried to hold back the emotions, but tears streamed down his face. He had loved her, trusted her without condition. But now all he had received in return was betrayal. A mix of anguish and fury overwhelmed him, and he felt as though he were sinking into a pit with no way out. He stood up, taking a deep breath. His marriage had crumbled without him even knowing it. Memories of the past rushed into Alex's mind like a slow-motion film. He remembered the first time he met Olivia, when they were both fresh graduates, full of passion and dreams. She was the only one who made him feel like he wasn't alone in this world. Together, they navigated the early days of their relationship, long nights talking about the future, about the unknowns, but always believing they would achieve everything together. He remembered the time they sat on the grass, gazing up at the starry sky. Olivia, with her sparkling eyes, had said something that Alex would never forget. "We're going to build a happy family? Alex, the family we've always dreamed of." At that moment, everything seemed perfect, like it would last forever. They married 2 years later, after a passionate courtship. Alex could still recall the feeling when he looked into her eyes on their wedding day, feeling like the world was theirs, and nothing could tear them apart. But marriage wasn't always as rosy as they had imagined. In the early years after they married, everything was wonderful, but then, when children came into the picture, things began to change. The evenings they once dedicated to each other turned into late nights filled with work and the responsibilities of parenthood. Olivia changed. There were no longer cozy dinners for just the two of them. No more lighthearted chats about dreams and aspirations. Everything began to fade, like a light drizzle falling on a lake, disappearing almost instantly. For Alex, work was everything. He was busy with large projects, meetings and deadlines chasing him every day. Olivia, on the other hand, grew increasingly exhausted with the burden of caring for the children alone. She no longer received the attention from him that she once did. How long had it been since he sent her a text asking how she was, or complimented her for all the hard work she put into the family. She was left with nothing but loneliness, trapped in a family full of responsibilities. Alex had no idea that, with each passing day, the gap between them was growing wider until they no longer saw each other. What Alex didn't know was that during these years, Olivia had started to feel like she was no longer herself. She had tried to remind him about the dinners out, the little family vacations, but all of these things were forgotten in the chaos of work. Olivia didn't dare to voice her feelings. She didn't want to hurt him, but inside, the pain had been building up. The lack of affection, the absence of care from the husband she had loved so much and sacrificed everything for, slowly pushed her into a dead end. One autumn evening, after Alex had finished a late meeting, he came home to find Olivia wasn't the same anymore. She was sitting by the window, the dim light casting a sad shadow on her face. Alex didn't know it, but in that moment, Olivia had made the decision that if she couldn't find the love she needed at home, she would seek it elsewhere. Alex didn't understand the subtle signs. He just thought, with such a busy life, anyone would feel exhausted. But the truth was, everything had changed a long time ago. He just didn't see it. He didn't notice the distance in Olivia's eyes, didn't recognize the sleepless nights she endured, didn't see the emptiness in her every answer. And then, when these feelings had reached a breaking point, Olivia met Max Donovan. He was a former colleague, someone she had known since her early days at the company. Max wasn't like Alex. He wasn't buried in endless meetings or weighed down by major projects. He always had time to listen, to share, and most importantly, he knew how to make her feel like the center of attention. Olivia began to feel cared for again. Her conversations with Max grew increasingly intimate. Then, one night, as they sat together in a small CF, Max gently placed his hand on hers, and in that moment, Olivia knew she could never go back. She had found something that had been missing from her marriage for too long, but she didn't dare to tell Alex. She feared he wouldn't understand, feared he wouldn't forgive her. Olivia thought, just a little longer, and she would find the balance she had been searching for in her life. But those wrong decisions, those secret meetings with Max, gradually pushed her into an inner struggle she couldn't escape from. When Alex looked back, he realized that the signs had been there all along. But he hadn't seen them. By the time everything became clear, all that was left was pain and regret, deep regret, for not noticing what had been happening right before his eyes. Alex's sleepless nights grew longer as he couldn't escape the thoughts of his wife. Each morning, he awoke to feel the distance between them growing, even though Olivia still appeared to be the dutiful wife, the caretaker of the family. But the silence in the house was like an underlying storm. He had asked her about the little things. "Are you okay? I feel like something is not right between us." But Olivia's answers were always awkward smiles and gentle nods, all lacking the sincerity he had once found in her. Though Alex knew his work took up too much of his time and energy, he still tried to make it up to her with outdoor dinners, short date nights, and promises that everything would be fine. But it seemed that all his efforts only made Olivia feel more alienated. She didn't speak up, but inside, her desperation had quietly ignited. She had tried so many times to reach out to Alex, but he was too busy, too absorbed in his work. And so, the unspoken gaps, the long nights without him beside her, became her place to seek comfort. Max Donovan appeared like a breath of fresh air in Olivia's life. He was an old colleague, someone she had known for a long time, but this reunion marked a significant change in her. Max wasn't like Alex. He didn't have endless meetings. He wasn't buried under heavy projects. He didn't live in constant busyness. Max always had time to listen, to share, and especially to make her feel important. Their innocent conversations slowly grew closer. Olivia, like a tired bird after days of flying, had found a safe haven in these meetings. One afternoon, after a meeting, Max invited Olivia for coffee. She had turned him down a few times before, but this time, something inside her made it impossible to refuse. They sat across from each other in the quiet space of a small CAF, the soft yellow light reflecting off Max's face, making him seem even more attractive, more approachable than ever before. Olivia could feel the closeness, the shared understanding in his eyes. It was the familiar, safe feeling she had long been searching for. Max didn't just listen to her, he understood her. He made her feel important, the center of attention, something Alex hadn't been able to do for a long time. Only Max, no one else, could make her feel like she wasn't just a bystander in her own life. As their conversations grew longer, the connection between Olivia and Max moved beyond work-related topics. They began talking about more personal things, their dreams, their hopes, and the emotional wounds that hadn't fully healed. Olivia began to feel understood, valued. Then, one breezy evening, as they sat together on a bench in the park, Max gently took her hand. The touch wasn't just a gesture of comfort. It was a sign of something bigger, something stronger. A fresh, burning desire and expectation stirred within her. Olivia's heart raced. For the first time in months, she didn't feel alone, forgotten. Looking into Max's eyes, she couldn't help but want to stay in that moment forever, away from all the pressures and exhaustion of her marriage. Max leaned in closer, and in that instant, Olivia knew she couldn't go back. She was on a path she couldn't turn away from. And when Max's lips softly met hers, everything blurred, as if time itself stopped. She was no longer Alex's wife. She wasn't just the mother of their children anymore. She was a woman in love with another man. And in that world, there was no room left for anyone else but Max. That encounter marked a turning point in Olivia's life. Her relationship with Max grew more intimate. Their secret meetings continued, and she found herself caught in emotions she had never anticipated. Each time she saw Max, she felt herself drifting further from Alex, sinking deeper into the freshness and vibrancy that Max brought into her life. She told herself she still loved Alex, but her heart no longer belonged to him. As all these emotions pushed Olivia to the brink, she couldn't stop herself, couldn't turn back to the life she once knew, because everything had changed too profoundly. Alex had no idea what was happening, still believing his wife was simply going through a rough patch. He thought that, with just a little effort, everything would be okay again. But in reality, with each passing day, the gap between them grew wider, and the painful truth was closing in. Every day, Alex felt the growing difference in the way Olivia treated him. She became quieter, less caring, and the long nights were no longer filled with their conversations. He began to feel as if he was living in a house that no longer belonged to him. Everything in the family seemed to stay the same, but the emotions between them had quietly shifted, slowly but surely, to the point where it was beyond repair. One morning, as Alex was getting ready to leave for work, he noticed Olivia's phone on the table. Although he knew he shouldn't, an overwhelming urge pushed him to take a look. His hands trembled as he unlocked it and saw an unread message from Max. "I miss you. Let us meet again tonight." Each word in that message struck him like a slap to the face, confirming the painful truth he had suspected for so long. Alex's heart pounded, a suffocating feeling overtaking him. He rifled through his memories, desperately trying to recall the signs he had ignored. When had Olivia changed? The unspoken questions gnawed at him, making him feel like a stranger in his own life. But there was no denying it. He had been deceived. And now all he could do was face the truth. The decision was made. Alex couldn't continue living in this lie. He could no longer pretend everything was fine when his whole world was falling apart. He called Olivia, demanding she come home immediately. The tension and unfamiliarity in his voice made Olivia uneasy. She didn't know what to say, didn't know how to explain herself when Alex already knew everything. When Olivia returned home, Alex stood there, his gaze as sharp as a lightning bolt. He didn't speak right away. Questions and thoughts swirled in his mind, but he knew there was no need for words. Everything was clear. He handed her her phone, his eyes filled with pain and anger. "You thought I didn't know?" he asked coldly. Olivia froze, unable to justify herself or blame anyone else. She felt like a criminal caught in the act, with nowhere to hide. She wanted to say something, to explain that she was just seeking comfort, that she hadn't meant to hurt him, but those words stuck in her throat. Alex knew everything. She had betrayed him, and in that moment, everything between them shattered beyond repair. "You lied to me, Olivia." Alex's voice rang out, cold and full of disappointment. "With Max, right? The messages, the calls. You could have told me everything, but you chose to keep it to yourself. And I can't continue living with someone I can't trust anymore." Olivia looked into his eyes, and she saw a fury and pain she had never seen before. She knew no apology could undo what had happened. Nothing could save their marriage because what had been done was too severe. She had lost him, lost everything. "You could forgive me," Olivia tried to say, her voice weak, but there was no hope in it. "Can you understand? I just needed someone to understand me, someone to make me feel like I wasn't living in the dark anymore." Alex heard her words, but felt nothing but coldness. He had heard enough. Olivia's betrayal wasn't just about an affair. It was about the lack of respect, the absence of care, the destruction of everything they had built together. How could he forgive something like that? "You made it so easy, Olivia," Alex said, each word like a sharp arrow. "We've been through so much together, but you chose to betray me for another man. I can't live with someone like that." Olivia said nothing, only stared at him in silence, tears quietly falling down her face. She knew it was over. There was nothing left to save. They had been through everything, but this betrayal was the price they had to pay. And in that moment, as their eyes met, they both realized one unchangeable truth. Their marriage was shattered forever. The whole house fell silent, heavy like a curtain that covered any remaining hope. Olivia stood there, her hands hanging limply at her sides, staring at Alex with an empty gaze, as if she no longer knew what to do or say to salvage this relationship. Every word seemed meaningless. All she could do was feel each beat of her heart, each beat like a blow to her conscience. Alex looked at her with eyes that no longer held love, only resentment and disappointment. He was no longer the loving husband, ready to forgive and fix things. Olivia's apologies, no matter how sincere, could not erase the painful truth he had just uncovered. He had tried for too long to save this relationship, but now, he realized that nothing could heal the wound in his heart. "Olivia," Alex said, his voice firm and decisive, "I can't live with you anymore. Not because I don't love you, but because I can't live with this betrayal. You've lost everything." Olivia lifted her head, her eyes full of tears, but the truth had broken her heart. She didn't know what to do, only stood there, in silence, looking at the husband she had once loved. It was all over. There was no chance to go back. One autumn evening, after broken words and painful glances, Alex made the decision to leave. He didn't look back, not once turning toward Olivia. The door closed behind him, and he stepped into the world, leaving behind any remnants of the past. The happy memories, the times they held hands and overcame struggles together, all gradually faded from his mind. Alex rented a small apartment in the city, a place where there were no painful memories of a family that had once meant everything to him. He didn't know what the future would hold, but at least, he no longer had to live in a relationship that had completely fallen apart. He dedicated time to work, to himself, to the small but meaningful things in life. On weekends, he took his son to the park, no longer the lost husband in a loveless marriage, but a father finding peace in his heart. Olivia continued her life, but it seemed as though those days had left behind an unhealable scar. Max was no longer the man she had hoped would replace Alex. He had left without so much as a glance back. And Olivia, now, realized that she had broken apart a once happy family. She felt emptier and lonelier than ever, with no one to lean on, no one to share her thoughts with. The months passed, and Olivia slowly began to accept the truth. She tried to be a better mother, though sometimes, as she looked at her children, tears would well up in her eyes, remembering everything that had been lost. Alex was no longer there to share the hardships of raising them. Each night, lying alone in the big bed, she wondered if she had made the right choice in taking the path of betrayal. But those thoughts couldn't reverse time, couldn't heal the wounds that had been carved deep into Alex's heart. As for Alex, despite his shattered heart, he knew he had to move forward. He no longer wanted to live in pain, no longer wanted to be haunted by the memories of Olivia. He found joy in waking up early, exercising, reading books, and taking time for himself. He no longer looked back on the past, but sometimes, in quiet moments, he wondered if he could ever love anyone again. But he knew, no matter what, he had to keep moving forward. And so, their story ended in silence. A marriage that had passed, a family that had fallen apart, but both Alex and Olivia had found their own paths. It was the price they had to pay for the mistakes of the past.